talk about how you can use AI to build consumer loyalty. The good folks at Inmar are all about using data and technology to build systems that help you all in the brand space connect, run your businesses better. In this case, we want to talk about how we're doing that thing that is so important to all of you, which is driving consumer loyalty. So before we get into it, because we are here as members and as members of the industry, I want to remind us all that we do have some requirements under our antitrust laws. So I'm going to ask Lauren to give a quick overview on that so we don't get into any hot water. Lauren?
Sure. Thank you so much. Hi, all. As is the practice, whenever we bring members together, we ask you familiarize yourself with our antitrust policy. In brief, we want to ensure that this conversation does not involve discussion of pricing, market allocation, or things similar, which can invite risk of anti-competitive dialogue. I would ask that you keep these parameters in mind for the Q&A portion of today's conversation. That being said, we can have a conversation about how the CPG industry can leverage AI and other tools for business needs, and I'll stay on to monitor the call to make sure we stay on track. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. Kyle has dropped the antitrust statement into the chat in case anyone needs to reference. A couple of housekeeping items before we dive in. Everybody's line was muted on entry to reduce background noise, but we do want to hear from you. We do want your questions. So please start thinking or keep your ears open for questions you may want to ask Sean-Ann and Tiffany. You will be able to enter them at the Q&A, the little Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. We will then pull them out. We do have some time set aside for questions, so I'm hopeful that you all will gather and join in. With that, let me begin with some introductions. Again, we're here to talk about how we can use, or you all can use AI to better connect with your clients. We want to talk and your customers. We want to talk about. I love this notion that Sean-Ann and Tiffany shared with us. How to build a cohort of one. How do you build that really deep connection to a consumer while being respectful of privacy and those kinds of things? A really fascinating topic. How do you use AI to do it? Really anxious to hear what they have to say. So Sean-Ann, both Sean-Ann and Tiffany, we are getting the best of the best from the Minneapolis area, I'm happy to say. Tiffany, let me start with Tiffany. Tiffany joins us from General Mills, a Consumer Brands member. She is a Cracker Jack marketing expert, has been with General Mills for more than 15 years, has been with a number of other Fortune 500 companies. She's been on the consulting side in advertising firms, so has really is an expert in the space. You don't have to take my word for it. She's been recognized by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal as one of the top women in business, which is a big deal. So we're really happy to have her speaking from the company side. And then Sean-Ann is, as you can see on the screen, the managing VP for brand sales at Inmar. As a VP in that space, she is tasked with helping to build these systems that connect brands with shoppers, using that data to pull things together in very bespoke plans. She also has been nationally recognized. She's been doing it for a long time, so we are really happy to have both of them here to share their expertise. So with that, I'm going to get out of your way. Consumer Brands is always happy to bring this kind of information to our members, to the audience. So I'll be back at the end to help manage questions. But again, ladies, thank you so much. And I'm going to, I think, kick to someone to get started. Tiffany and Sean-Ann, the floor is yours.
It's neat. Thanks, Jenna. We're really excited to walk through kind of what we're seeing in the market and how we're responding to it. So from an agenda perspective, first, we're going to talk a little bit about what's shifting for consumers. Then we'll dig into how personalization and AI can help marketers respond in a smarter, more scalable way. And then finally, we are going to share how we're putting this into practice. So let's begin by just kind of grounding ourselves in what consumers are actually going through right now, because that's ultimately what's going to influence all the decisions that we make. So let's start with what consumers are up against right now. Budgets are tight. I think we all know that. People are trying to make smarter choices across more options and more platforms than ever before. So they're not just buying, they're actually researching, they're weighing trade offs, actively working to stretch every single dollar. And you can see that kind of play out in the stats here, right? So 89% are spending more than 10 minutes researching before they buy. And then many of them are actually navigating multiple touch points just so that they can have some confidence in their decisions too. So oftentimes we're finding that they are buying in a totally different channel than where they may have discovered the product. And then look at Gen Z. 71% are actively participating in dupe culture. So if you're not familiar, it's choosing more affordable versions of the products that they're after. And they're not just doing it out of necessity, it's culturally smart. Like they're out there bragging about it. So when we talk about today's shopper, we're talking about someone who is empowered, deliberate, and super proud of being savvy.
That's absolutely right, Shanann. And that means that as consumers have shifted their mindset, it certainly means that us as brand builders and marketers have to change how we show up. We can no longer assume that a consumer is just going to remember us or discover a great deal we have at the point of conversion. We have to do the work to earn a spot in their consideration set early and often. And earning that spot in their consideration set is not just about being louder and increasing our investment to drive reach. And we know, as Shannon said, budgets are tight. There's not a whole lot of investment, incremental investment for sure to come these days. It really becomes about being more relevant in the moments where they're building their consideration set. And so that demands more of us as marketers for sure. Right? Consumers are savvier, they are more empowered, and they just have more information. And because of that, they expect differential value. And that's value with a capital V, value in all forms, right? It is for sure savings, it's convenience, it's aligning themselves with brands that care about what they care about and making it worth it, and however they define what worth it is. More than half of consumers say that convenience drives their purchase decisions, and 33% will spend more if that convenience is personalized. And over 80% want a brand's values to match their own. So that tells us right there that value today is just as emotional as it is practical or rational.
Exactly. So it's not just about offering that deal or an incentive. It's about helping someone feel like they're making the right choice with less friction. So that's where marketers can really differentiate by delivering relevance, not just discounting. So when we understand more about how value is being defined differently, then we can start creating experiences that reflect that not just messaging that speaks to price. So, of course, while consumers are becoming more intentional, brands are facing growing pressure to meet those expectations. And we are finding their systems are not always built for it. So, we're dealing with scattered data and data sources, media strategies that don't always connect to outcomes, and some outdated attribution models that make it hard to actually prove what's working. And that pressure isn't just about making the meaningful connections, it's also about showing results, especially when business is tough. So we have to make sure that our approach to personalization isn't just thoughtful, but also efficient and measurable.
Absolutely. And the work actually starts internally, right? It begins by making sure that we are naming the pressures and polarities that we are navigating as marketers, highlighting where we might be holding on to legacy processes that won't serve us in the future. And with that, you'll be better able to build internal alignment on where new or different data may help, and then assess how quickly we can act to collect that data. We're going to talk a lot about personalization in the rest of this webinar. And what I'll say here is that personalization cannot succeed in isolation. It has to be operationally supported. And this is where we really hit the turning point. If you are working on tools or technology or even in an org structure that is optimized for yesterday's marketing, you will get yesterday's results, right? Those tools are not going to help you move forward. And we don't need perfect systems. There are no perfect systems. However, what we do need to do as leaders in this space is to create room to try new things, create more room for experimentation, make sure that we are building measurement plans with clarity, and then, of course, moving with urgency.
Totally. It's not about blowing everything up. It's about asking, where can we carve out space to test something smarter? Even a small shift in how we're measuring something or where we allocate dollars can open the door to bigger, more scalable improvements that will give better outcomes. All right. So let's take you through the framework that's been guiding how we think about this. So the way we look at it, personalization is the strategy and AI is the enabler. Then we have human guidance, which is what makes it connect. So we've got a real example here of how this fits together. When we tested creative performance, we tested creative generated with AI. That had the lowest performance. We also tested creative prepared by humans alone, which outperformed all the rest in terms of engagement. However, to execute this in a highly personalized approach is hard or even impossible to scale. So the best performing approach was actually AI with human refinement. So this ends up achieving almost the same level of performance as the solely human generated version, but with the added benefit and huge benefit of repeatability and automation. So that's how we build personalization that both performs and scales, ultimately building loyalty because it feels authentic.
For sure. All right, Shanann. So what I'm hearing you say is a couple things. One, it's really about matching the power of automation with good judgment, right? Secondly, I'm hearing you say that personalization at scale only really works when we can balance reach with relevance. And the last thing that is coming through for me is that AI-powered personalization guided by human insight can do much more than just increase conversion, right? It helps us prove value early, build trust with the folks who we want to serve, and then ultimately earn long-term loyalty.
Right. So now that we've laid out that thinking, let's walk through how this actually comes to life in day-to-day marketing. I know you've got a great example, Tiffany.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to share a sample campaign on Nature Valley. And the goal with this campaign was really make sure that the first interaction that consumers were having with the brand felt timely and it felt intentional. Our goal was to bring new households into the brand and stand out in what can be a somewhat noisy and crowded category in the bar space. So here we work with Inmar to personalize 350,000 variations of a single video asset. That's a lot, like 350,000 variations. And we did that by using their Moments AI personalization technology, which allowed us to speak to different consumers individually in different moments, depending on what felt right for them. So for example, we reached our current buyers or folks who are loyal to Nature Valley, or are, at least I'd say, semi-regular buyers of Nature Valley. We connected with them when they were running errands on the weekend. So as they were in the mindset to prepare for their weekend grocery shop for the week, to make sure that Nature Valley ends up on that shopping list. In the second variation, we got in front of lapsed users with on-the-go messaging. So to remind them of how easy yet fulfilling a Nature Valley bar can be, and try to encourage them to come back into the franchise. In the third example, we actually reached out to folks who were buying competitive brands, so not buying Nature Valley. And we led here with really the deliciousness of the food as a key message that really showed how Nature Valley was a good fit for their entire family. So these are just 3 different examples in a campaign of 350,000 variations, but I'm sure you can already start to see how the puzzle pieces fit together and how we can, mutate messages to speak to different consumers in different ways. And this really allowed us to get in front of new consumers, which was for sure the goal of the campaign, to attract new households to Nature Valley. And that resulted in 45% of our sales being generated by those new buyers or new consumers. In the end, we drove over $3 million in sales, And with that, we have established or started at least to establish a stronger relationship with those existing brand buyers while we were attracting new folks to the franchise.
Exactly. And it worked because we didn't just set it and forget it. We started small, we paid attention to the signals, and then used that learning to drive better engagement at scale. So that's what we do with Moments AI. It's all about that equation that we started with earlier. So we're combining human insight and data to find what works for individual consumers based on what's going on in their day or in their life. And then we're doing the same thing for the next shopper and the next shopper. And hundreds of thousands of times over, we're taking that same approach, but it's all happening in the blink of an eye. And this is what we meant when we said AI allows us to scale individual interactions in a way that humans alone just can't do. And in the end, it helps us not just attract new buyers, but it also helps initiate a more meaningful relationship right from the get-go. It's all about that first impression, right? Okay, so we've opened the door and brought those new and existing consumers through it at least once now. So how do we go about inspiring repeat purchases, and which is obviously the first big step toward loyalty?
Sure. So this next example kind of builds on the Nature Valley example that I shared just a bit ago. And the way we look at it, once you have attracted new users or new consumers to your franchise, you've really created a new opportunity for yourself. And that opportunity is around incrementality or pulling people deeper into the portfolio. So we have this example here where we wanted to bring personalization to more of our snack portfolio. So going beyond just Nature Valley. And we wanted to reach relevant consumers with different products in different parts. So we have products squarely in the morning occasion when folks are looking for an energy boost. Then we've got snack brands that fit really squarely in that salty snack craving in the afternoon. And then for sure, there are brands that deliver on that sweet treat or sweet craving after dinner that I know that I have, and I'm sure that a lot of you have too. Um, and in the end, we inspire folks to buy another brand within the same portfolio. And so even thinking about or leveraging this approach, of course, it drove significant sales lift in iROAS, but it also started a pattern of repeat purchase. And repeat purchase, again, is a major building block of loyalty.
Right. So this is where we bring it all together. If we want to build loyalty tomorrow, we have to be more intentional about how we move forward today. And if we want to build stronger connections and loyalty in the long term, we first need to understand our tolerance for innovation. So, what is the level of flexibility your team has to try something new, even if it's not fully proven yet? That's something that's uncomfortable sometimes, but it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a big, bold bet. It might be carving out a small test budget, or maybe it's piloting a new message in one channel. The point is giving yourself the room to learn and then develop your strategy from there.
For sure. And once you understand where you can flex or where your tolerance for change is, like Shanann just explained, then you should look at what your partners bring to the table, right? Partners like MR have so many different tools, technologies, and capabilities that they've already built that you may not be fully tapping into yet. And quite honestly, they're probably leveraging them with other partners that will create more ways for you to learn. It's just that sometimes idea it's already there. It's just about knowing who can help unlock it and using partners to help you get there. And then for sure, once you understand what your partners have, what tools or capabilities they may have at their disposal, then you have to co-design, test, or experiments with them. Right? Collaboration is everything. This is not the opportunity to write a brief, send it off, and then get a report in 6 to 8 weeks. This is not that. This means that you are staying at the table, you and your partner together. You are setting clear KPIs together. You are building a measurement plan together, and then leveraging their expertise and insight to inform how your teams may need to work differently or how your internal systems may need to evolve once you get to the place where you want to scale whatever it is you're learning or testing. And we talk a lot about reporting is for short-term gains, but measurement and optimization are really the long game. And that's really only possible if there is strong partnership and really deep collaboration.
Exactly. You raised so many good points there, and that brings us to making better use of what we already have. So there's almost always some spend that's underperforming or is outdated in its allocation, and reclaiming that budget, however small or large it might be, and applying it to things that are measurable and iterative. I think that's key as well to continue evolving. That's how we keep moving ahead without this massive reinvention that I think people kind of envision when they think about making a shift to leveraging tools like this. So let's wrap up with a couple takeaways that sum up kind of where we've landed. First is that consumer expectations have changed. So how you reach them needs to change too. People are redefining value, and that means we have to rethink how, where, and when we show up. AI is technology that enables the scale, but it's the human input that actually ensures the quality and the resonance. So technology can make things faster, and we definitely want to leverage that, but it is that human layer that makes it meaningful. I think we all have experienced when someone sends you something straight out of ChatGPT. Like, you can detect that. It's the human element that really makes the difference. And then today's marketing must be nimble. So make space to test, learn, and adapt. You don't need a fully built out roadmap, but you do need room to learn and define what you want to learn. And that's the learning that isn't instant. It takes testing, measuring, testing again, watching performance evolve over time. It's not just about judging success by a single campaign. It's about having discipline and patience to track how behavior changes and optimizing with that bigger picture in mind. Okay, so we have covered quite a bit today. I'm sure there are some questions we can help answer. We know AI is very buzzy, but ultimately it's just about getting some testing done. So let's see how things are coming in from a question standpoint.
Okay, Sean and Tiffany, I'm back and I'm pulling out questions, and Kyle is sending some over. The first is goes back to something that I think that Sean Ann talked about, so maybe this is for you. You talked about personalization meaning more than just a name. So how do you define what that is? What does real personalization look like is the question.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. It's true. I think a lot of us have legacy in understanding personalization in the context of like making sure that someone's name is included. And that's a kind of an easy, low-hanging fruit way to sort of add some additional personalization. I personally occasionally get Mr. Sean Ann Buttshaw, which is not appreciated and kind of shows a little the inauthenticity. So what real personalization is about is delivering value in the moment. It's not just knowing like who someone is, but it's knowing also what matters to them right now. So for us, a big part of it is using connected data to meet consumers where they are with messaging that reflects both their behavior and their context. So what that might mean is tailoring creative based on time of day, the device that they're on, their shopping intent, or even their past engagement. So not just focusing on things like demographics, some of those kind of standards that I think we're all familiar with, but it also means thinking about the full journey. So using predictive signals to reach someone with the right tone or the right message before they even take an action. So today, it's really about setting the foundation for building more relevant consumer experiences across every channel, like based on who they are.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so this one is coming in from the chat, so I'm going to read it. And maybe Tiffany, you can take this one since we just heard from Shonan. How do you recommend teams start identifying what to test or optimize, especially if they're feeling stuck with an existing campaign?
Yes. Thank you for the question. And I mean, we know that sometimes we can hit a plateau and start feeling stuck or even recognize some inconsistencies. And I'd say that's exactly where you want to spend some time in thinking about what questions to ask. So if you're stuck, if you're seeing a plateau or inconsistency, start to explore why, right? Zoom in on maybe one particular area. Maybe your audience targeting is broad or your messaging just isn't quite landing. But what is really important here is that you are formulating a question and then designing a test that will help you answer that question. Right? We know that good experiments should help answer a question that moves you forward. They should not just confirm what you already know. I'm sure we have all been in situations or rooms where we're like, hey, that's not, we already know the answer to that. So why are we investing here in this test? So you want to make sure that you're not doing that, right? You're not seeking perfection. You are not looking to affirm what you already know, but you're actually trying to answer an open question and gather additional learning. And then finally, what I'd say is just make sure that whatever test you design, right, that question that you form, that test or experiment is connected to a goal that your team cares about. Right? Because if it's easier to justify, of course, if it's linked to conversion, efficiency, or retention, because those are the metrics that we care the most about. So you want to make sure that whatever question that you're asking, that you are clear on how it connects to whatever it is that are the big goals or KPIs that your business or brand has prioritized.
I'm going to follow up here. So clearly the theme, Tiffany, I'm going to follow up with you. Clearly the theme here is progress over perfection. Don't kill yourself over perfection. Yep. My question, though, is one that is giving me a little bit of PTSD from my McDonald's days. When you come up with a great new idea, I assume, in the corporate world, still, even in my world, in the trades, AI is big and it's new and it's kind of scary, and tech is always a little challenging. So tell me a little bit, what's your best advice for when you come up with a big idea, potentially one that's fueled by AI and tech? What's your best advice for getting buy-in across the enterprise? How do you get alignment so that you can activate?
Yeah. Yeah, Jenna, we probably might, it sounds like we have some of the same brand of PTSD a little bit working in big enterprises. One of the things that I've learned, and I am a person that is so drawn to transformation and so drawn to doing things differently. I have a really high risk tolerance, which can be at odds and can create tension, especially in some of the places where I've worked. But one thing that I have learned is to begin with making it feel low risk, right? We're not using language like transformation or a shift in strategy. Like those are not the words that we're going to use here. We're going to talk about limited tests. Maybe it's an A/B test. Maybe it's a pilot that starts with one region. Maybe we are thinking about testing a particular way to go to market with a consumer group that we prioritize, right? So you want to really demonstrate that you're not asking for a significant shift, because that can cause a lot of consternation and connects back to something we talked about earlier when there are such strong legacy processes and ways to measure success and outcomes and business impact. When we want to change that up, it can start to make us feel uncertain as business owners about what outcomes we're going to drive, right? And so we don't want to disrupt that all at once. So it's important that we're kind of exploring one new approach at a time, again, that aligns with that broader goal, that thing that we really care about. If we are really focused on driving units or driving volume right now, demonstrate how this experiment is going to help us do that better. If we're really focused on attracting new households or driving penetration, focus on how this shift or how this experiment might support us doing that. And then, of course, sharing examples or benchmarks that highlight how other teams or other brands have experienced success as a result. I love a good case study. I love, if I can get my hands on it, a competitive case study, right? Nothing motivates sometimes like what the person you can't stand is doing, or the person that's eating your lunch, right? Nothing motivates like that. So building in some of that insight to then try to create a low risk experiment, and to do it in a way that feels safe and contained, to then go and say, all right, now that we've done it on this kind of business or in this instance, we might be ready to then slowly roll it out and ultimately reach scale.
I love it. I love it. Low risk and safe and contained.
Yeah.
All things that are, but to scale,
Yeah.
do it so that you can go big. I love that. Um, I am a non-marketing gal who is fascinated endlessly by the kinds of things you are thinking about, the ways you're thinking about moving consumers, how you're using AI to expand the power to do that, your ability to customize. The notion of 350,000 different variations on one campaign is mind-boggling and fascinating to me. So as a non-marketer, I'm fascinated by all of it. But clearly, your colleagues in the marketing space, they're experts. They know what they're doing. Are there things that you both see at the moment that are particularly important signals that people should be watching out in the marketplace, your colleagues in the marketing space that they should be watching? If it were me, I'd watch it all. But how are you? What are the things that are most important?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I can take that. So, and I think too, when we talk about understanding consumers and understanding them individually, right? The tendency, I think, is to sort of narrow down the focus and get really granular. And those can be important, but we recommend that you actually zoom out first. Like, look at a broader business context that should suggest like where you want to look closer to understand the behavior. And then based on your KPIs, there's some signals that you could look at. So behavior obviously is one of the clearest signals. That means like what people are clicking on, how long they're engaging, what they're ignoring. And it tells you a little bit more about what's working even before purchases are made. And then context adds another layer. So it tells you a little bit about is it morning? Is it evening? Are you going to change your messaging based on what's happening in the day? Mobile or desktop engagement, like how are they running? Or are they, in a lean back moment scrolling on Instagram? Are they in store? Are they on the go? These are all factors that shape their intent and receptivity to the messaging that you're going to be sharing with them. And then, of course, loyalty and transaction data are gold mines in terms of the ability to understand repeat behaviors, timing patterns, and switching tendencies. So if you're using segments, we really recommend you look beyond demographics. Like, not every person age 55 plus is the same. Try grouping them more by need states or life moments. Some things that we've used in the past are like post-work unwinders, people in that moment, people in the moment of weekend meal planning. And the best personalization really does come when you connect like who someone is with why they're shopping and what they need in that moment.
That's great. I see just one more question in the queue. Um, and I guess it's sort of a big, broad question, so I'm gonna just ask it broadly. Maybe Tiffany, it's a good place for you to start. How does social media, TikTok and Snap, and how does all of that factor into how you think about personalization?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at this point, I think we all think about social media as kind of one of the required channels, right? Like no different than we thought about TV and all the things back in the day. Like social media has just become a piece of it. And we consider kind of all the ways to leverage social, and then influencers really play a big role here as well. So I would, encourage you that as you're building out a personalization strategy, it should include kind of all of your both traditional and non-traditional media outlets or channels that you might consider in any other sort of campaign.
Fantastic. Ladies, I think I'm looking. I think we've picked up all of the questions that have come in to our audience. If you have other questions, you can drop them in quickly. If you don't, please know that we at Consumer Brands host these kinds of events fairly regularly, so you can find more information on our events and education page. Tiffany, Sean-Ann, thank you for joining us, for the information, for helping us sort of sort through this big AI space. Sean-Ann, a special thanks to you and to Inmar for making us all a lot smarter. We are continually thankful for your partnership on the regular as we go forward. At the Consumer Brands Association, our members are thankful. We are thankful. So thanks very much for that. Again, you can find more information, listeners, out there on Consumer Brands events and information page, our events and education page. We look forward to seeing you all in the future. And we will be back. Look for more information from us on the interwebs, as they say. And I will look forward to seeing you all soon. Sean-Ann, Tiffany, thank you so much.